We're going to get back to that point, but in your book, you point out that Dr. Johnson seemed to care so much for Arthur Ashe as a son that one of his own children was a little edgy about how much the father cared for another child. And also, you go in your book and extensively and point out what a gentleman Dr. Johnson was, and how he wanted all of his mentees to have good manners. He told them in one occasion that when you go to this tournament, don't do anything the white folks can use against you, so we can't be invited back. He was cognizant of turning the other cheek, very much in the Martin Luther King mode and all of this. Then you made a statement in your book, and I didn't know exactly what you were saying, seemed to be a little tongue-in-cheek, about what Dr. Johnson today would think of Venus and Serena Williams. What are you saying? What do you think Dr. Johnson would think of them?
Oh, I don't think that he would have that great of a problem with them at this time. Now, obviously, if it were in the period, you see, the thing that you have to keep in mind is that this was a period of racial segregation. Just as Jackie Robinson had to be groomed and had to, he was handpicked because he was of his demeanor. He would not be assertive, aggressive. He would not use obscene language. So I don't think Venus and Serena are in that sense.
Well, but you do specifically say that Dr. Johnson counseled his mentees to not contest calls.
Oh, yes.
And I don't think we could say that about the
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, well, it's, as I say, it's still a different era.
Okay.
And during that time, anything that we did, we might have been thrown out of the tournament, and that would not help the program.
That would have been a pretext to get rid of us because we were black.
In fact, he went beyond that. There were many times, in fact, I remember one event, Arthur Ashe was in the quarterfinals of the U.S. Interscholastics in Charlottesville, playing against a fellow named Billy Lenore. And Lenore was a top-ranked player, and he should have won the match. Arthur had him on the ropes, but he saw a ball go behind, on the court, behind Billy, and he said, "Did that ball bother you?" And he turned around and said, "Oh, yeah, you know we have to play two if the ball is on the court." And he fumed about that the whole time because he knew that Lenore didn't see the ball, but he thought about the fact that Johnson had trained him always, even though it didn't affect him. It could have, so he had to say, let's play two.
But Arthur Ashe was rather polished when he got to Dr. Johnson, wasn't he? Or did Dr. Johnson do the polishing?
Well,
Arthur Ashe had this gentlemanly...
Yeah, Arthur was always self-controlled, kind of a person who would not rock any boats and certainly would not use obscene language and would not throw temper tantrums. So in that sense, yes, but I think that made it easier for Dr. Johnson to take him all the way.
To shape him.
Yeah.
But that was the mold that Dr. Johnson was looking for.
In fact, if you cut up at his events, you wouldn't be there. You wouldn't go back.
You were gone.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, this is a picture from you in which Dr. Johnson is holding a newspaper, All Hail Althea.
Yes.
That's one of her...
That's in 1957 when she won Wimbledon. In fact, she sent him a telegram and said that this championship is partly yours.
All right.
Because of the role he played.
I want to get to the last couple of chapters in your book.
Okay.
Which in tone change a little from the historical content you're describing. Am I correct?
Somewhat.
And you, first of all, let's help the audience understand a little more about you. For 25 years, you've been a major journalist, USA Today sports editor, tennis editor.
Tennis writer.
Tennis writer, USA Today, 15 years.
Right.
New York Daily News, New York Post.
A couple of years.
And before many blacks were present in that mainstream era.
Newsday.
Newsday,
right.
That's a New York newspaper.
Right.
And you were a sports writer there?
I covered sports, yes.
Covered sports there.
Covered Julius Erving when he was Dr. J. All
right. And where else in media what might I miss?
Those are three.
Those are three major ones. Yeah. And we all know that Arthur Ashe, most of us know, that Arthur Ashe died of AIDS, and that his AIDS was contracted through his experience in a hospital
Blood
or with
transfusions.
medical. He was not a homosexual, etc. But at that time, everybody with AIDS was suspected of being a homosexual. So it was made clear from his medical records that it had happened in a hospital with a blood transfusion or something to that effect. But it's sensitive to say, more sensitive then and even now, that someone had AIDS. But you were obviously a friend of his. You played tennis against him as young men. And now here you are, the sports writer, the tennis writer for the largest newspaper in America, and you're covering Arthur Ashe. No one knew, the public didn't know that he had AIDS, but your newspaper broke the story.
Right.
You want to tell us your involvement in the USA Today breaking that story?
Yeah, somehow I decided to include that whole episode in the final chapter. It's called a bonus chapter because Arthur and I grew up together. We played tennis against each other in high school. Even when I was at Hampton and he was at UCLA, we used to write occasionally. When I went to Vietnam, he came over with the U.S. Davis Cup team, and we made sure we got together. And I asked him to say hello to my wife, and he did when he went back. And when I moved to New York with Newsday, he lived in Manhattan, so we got a chance to see each other. Then we invited him out to our house in Huntington, so it was a very close relationship. During 1992, I did learn, and it's, you know, I'm still puzzled all the time why I didn't know about this before someone else told me. Because there were some other people in the media who actually knew about it, but I didn't. And I think there were a couple of meetings that we had where he acted like he might have wanted to tell me something, but he didn't. I got the call which indicated that this was something that was true, and I decided that I should go to his house to talk to him about it. The most difficult assignment that I ever had for obvious reasons. And when I went there, he was calm, and he indicated that this is something that he wanted to talk to my editor about. So I said I would have him call you, and he did. The next day, he decided that because USA Today was talking about doing the story, that he would announce it himself. And he invited me back to his house that morning and gave me the story, and I wrote it for our international editions. So we, in that sense, got the exclusive. But it was a troubling period. It was very troubling for me because, you know, this was something about a close friend. But more important, it was something that was causing him stress. It was the first time I'd seen him break down. And I explained in the book, when we had our private conversation, he was angry. He did not want me to, he didn't like the fact that I had come. And he said it, and he said, "Why did you come?" And I said, "Well, Arthur, it's my job, and I didn't want anybody else doing my job." And that kind of cooled him down somewhat. And I got hate mail like you've never seen before because of that. And even some of my colleagues indicated that this is something they might not have done because of it. And obviously I had my doubts about it, but because of what he did with his life those last 10 years, I feel comfortable about it now. First thing he did, he formed the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS, and he raised $5 to $6 million.
We only have a few seconds,
okay.
But I do want to ask you one question if you give me a short answer. Was this chapter a confessional on your part?
Yeah, it was therapeutic. I mean, it was something that I felt I should include it, but
Sort of like you were talking to Arthur.
Well, maybe not that far, because I think we had gotten to the point where, in fact, I was working on a book with him at that time, Hard Road to Glory.
And we're on a hard road called time. I thank you, sir.
Okay.
Interesting book, and thank you for the candor.
Thanks.
Tony Brown Productions produces this program and is solely responsible for its content.